If you're also someone who really cares about their work, about the impact that they want to have, yet you're going through burnout recovery, sometimes a question comes up. How do you change your relationship with the work that you do without giving up on the work that matters? And that's the question that I've been wrestling with today, because over the last few weeks of my own burnout recovery, I've realized something. I don't actually want to escape. I don't want to care less. I don't want to become someone who stops seeing the problems and tries to find solutions to improve things. What I do want is a different relationship with all of it. And while I was swimming today, an analogy came up to mind. It helped me make sense of why. So imagine you're flying a plane. Your destination matters. You want to go, let's say, from London to LA, California. And you know where you want to get to, but somewhere along that flight, you hit turbulence. So what do? Most of us only see two options. You either fight through it or you turn around. You either work harder or you give up. But what do pilots do? Because they know that there's a third option. They ask to climb. Sometimes that turbulence isn't everywhere. Sometimes the smoothest flight comes from a different altitude, maybe a higher altitude. And that got me thinking today. Maybe burnout isn't about the destination. It's not about changing the business or the career. Maybe it's about how we're trying to get there. This analogy stayed with me all morning because that's exactly how burnout has felt for me. The circumstances don't seem to have magically changed. The problems I care about are still there. People are still struggling to access health services. Workplaces still, leave good people exhausted. I still see business owners, entrepreneurs, founders considering even leaving their business behind because they just can't cope anymore. The systems I care about haven't suddenly become fixed. So, if the turbulence is still there, what exactly is changing? I'm beginning to think that the biggest change isn't always outside of us. Maybe it's the altitude from which we're experiencing those same circumstances. So when I first burnt out, I assumed recovery meant building a stronger plane, a stronger nervous system, better habits, better boundaries, more resilience. And I still do think that those things matter. Looking after our physical and mental health matters enormously. Getting the medical care that we need, maybe sometimes a medication can help. But I'm beginning to think that that's only one part of the picture, because you can build an incredibly strong aeroplane and still spend the flight going through turbulence. So then I realized something else. Perhaps there are actually three things we can work on. The first is obviously let's improve the plane. Let's look after ourselves. Let's recover, sleep more, sleep better, heal, learn healthier ways of working. The second thing is reducing the turbulence itself, improving the systems, improving workplaces, improving health and well-being services, designing better businesses, better organizations, and removing unnecessary friction so fewer people have to fly through the storms in the first place. That's always been the part that excites me. It's why I studied medicine. It's why I became a public health doctor. It's why I'm fascinated by innovation and improvement and entrepreneurship. I genuinely believe we can build better systems. I'm not going to give up on that. But there is this third part. And I think this is the one that we've overlooked most of our careers. Sometimes, before we redesign the entire system, before we solve the problem, before we try to change the world, we need to change the altitude from which we're engaging with it. I've noticed something during my own burnout recovery. When my mind is caught up in fear, urgency, frustration, or constant thinking, everything seems to feel heavier. My thinking becomes narrower. I become reactive. Creative ideas become harder to find. But occasionally, almost without trying, when my mind settles, something around me has changed. The problems are still there, but I experience them differently and I can see possibilities that I couldn't see before. It's as though sometimes the turbulence hasn't completely disappeared, but I've just climbed just high enough to see beyond it. Again, not because the circumstances stop mattering, they absolutely do, but because the quality of my thinking seems to change with the quality of my state of mind. And perhaps that's where our best ideas come from. Now, for me, this changes the question completely. Instead of asking, how do I push harder? I'm starting to ask, what state of mind would allow me to contribute my very best thinking? That maybe changing our relationship with work isn't about caring less. Maybe it's about creating the conditions where wisdom, creativity, perspective, and compassion can emerge more often. Perhaps that's how we become people who improve the world, improve organizations, improve businesses, create more impact without destroying ourselves in the process. One thing I've also realized over the past few weeks is just how lonely this burnout journey can feel. And not many people talk openly about these questions, especially if you're someone who cares deeply, someone who's always tried to improve things, someone who can't simply switch that part of yourself off. And that's one of the reasons I'm making these videos, not because I have the answers, far from it, but because I don't want people like us to feel as though we're asking these questions alone. So alongside these reflections, I'm beginning to create a space where people like us can explore work, burnout, purpose, and what's next together. So if that sounds like something you'd value, you'll find more details in the description below and also on my profile. I'd genuinely love for you to join us. Now, today's question isn't how do I stop caring? I think it's this. How do I improve the aeroplane, help reduce the turbulence, but also learn how to fly from a higher altitude? Because perhaps that's how we create lasting change, not by carrying the whole world on our shoulders, but by becoming the kind of people who can keep showing up with clarity, with creativity, and with enough peace of mind to keep making things better for years to come.